Okay. Greetings to any newcomers that have joined now. This is the Ham Basics section of things. And today's topic is basically, once you get your license, that's all well and good, but how do you really learn what to do? And how do you get experience? And how do you learn the actual practical part of operating in ham radio? So that's what we're going to try and look at, how some ways to help develop skills and some of the resources available through clubs or emergency communications groups or other activities. Let's start.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
All right. Had to start off with something humorous. So our objectives today are to explore a couple of things. First of all, if you want to improve your skills, you might want to figure out first what interests you. And when you just kind of determine what things interest you, then what are the skills that are needed to follow that interest, to get involved in whatever that is. And then we'll talk about some of the resources that are maybe available depending on what it is you are interested in, and how clubs and emergency communications groups fit into all of that as a resource. Some definitions. Again, I've just uploaded a PDF of these slides into the chat if you want to download that, and you can refer back to some of these definitions, but several of these are going to be, you'll be hearing a lot about. ACS is Auxiliary Communications Service. It's kind of an umbrella term for what's usually kind of a combination of two other terms we're going to get to, ARES and RACES. ARES, ARES, is the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, which is a service or a function under the ARRL, or the American Radio Relay League, which is the National Association for Ham Radio. So it is there's a nationwide organization that supports this. AUXCOM is a Department of Homeland Security course for amateur radio operators. ATV, all-terrain vehicles. CAP, Civil Air Patrol, we'll talk about that briefly. CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams, we'll touch on that. I already mentioned DHS. DX is a term for long distance contacts. We talk about, usually when people refer to DX, they're talking about outside the continental US or maybe even outside of North America. It's kind of a loose term. EC is an ARRL emergency coordinator for a specific area. MCOM, emergency communications, common term. I think we all know what FEMA is. HT is a handheld radio. ICS is the incident command system used in emergency management. IOTA Islands on the air, we'll talk about that, which is similar to POTA, Parks on the Air. MARS is the military auxiliary radio system. It's a lot of ham operators get involved in that. It's not ham radio. It's operating on federal frequencies, but it supports the military. RACES is the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. That's not an organization. It is a radio service like amateur radio, CB, broadcast radio, whatever, that can be used in emergencies. Typically, it is ham radio operators who do that. REACT, the Radio Emergency Associated Communications Teams. This is an organization nationwide that includes ham radio operators, but also CB operators, family radio service, non-ham systems. RTTY, Radio Teletype. Saturn is the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network. SOTA Summits on the Air and Single Sideband SSB. Okay, so interests. What are you interested in? What do you want to do? Why are you doing ham radio? Some people do it because they like to build things. They're into electronics. They want to, build equipment. That's for some people. It's not for everybody. Some people want to do CW or Morse code. Some just gonna want to get on the radio and socialize. We call that rag chewing. Just want to socialize. Some are interested in HF communications, particularly DX or contact with distant stations. They're enthralled with the idea of I could talk to somebody in Australia or whatever. People are interested in digital modes. Find a lot more, the younger people who've grown up more with digital modes and digital operations are much more interested perhaps in digital modes. Emergency communications. I suspect most of you are interested in that. Some people are interested in supporting community events like races or parades, things like that. You might be interested in radio teletype, which is certainly was popular in years past. It's kind of been overtaken to a large extent by digital modes, but a lot of people are still interested in RTTY or slow scan TV. People are interested in operating with satellites, contacting through satellites, or a lot of outdoor activities like ATVs, hiking, mountaineering, boating, or fox hunts, which are using directional antennas and amateur radio to locate a hidden object that's a small transmitter somewhere. Different things that people might be interested in. So let's say you're interested in one of these things. What sort of skills might you need? Well, if you're going to get into electronics or building things, you have to learn how to do things like soldering, using test equipment, building cables, troubleshooting equipment. That might be the thing you're interested in, much more technical side of things. So those would be skills you'd need to develop. If you want to do CW, well, first of all, you got to learn Morse code, right? And you also need to get better at it and improve your speed and accuracy. So those would be skills you would want to acquire if that's the field that interests you. If you're interested in digital modes, you need some computer skills. If you're interested in outdoor activities, you'll find it becomes important to know how to assemble and set up things that are portable or mobile stations outdoors somewhere. You'd want to improve your mic techniques and procedures, and you would need to be able to troubleshoot your equipment because when you go taking things outdoors in the field, stuff doesn't always work right. So you need to kind of learn some of those skills if that's what interests you. If you're into emergency communications, some of those same things would apply, assembling and setting up portable and mobile stations, improving mic techniques and procedures, learning digital modes like WinLink and FLDigi, understanding the incident command system that's used by emergency managers, troubleshooting your equipment, and operating nets. A net is a group of people talking together on the radio, and that needs to be controlled somehow, so there's some order to it. So you usually have a net control station that runs that net. That would be a skill that you would want to have. Similarly, if you're going to get involved with public service events like supporting a marathon or something like that, then you would, again, need to be able to operate portable and mobile stations and set them up, and you'd want to improve your mic techniques and procedures. You might need to know about APRS, Automatic Packet Reporting System, to report locations, things like that. Troubleshooting, running nets, some of those same techniques we just talked about would be appropriate to that. Number one resource, though, is get on the air. That's number one. Having your license, you can frame it or whatever, but it doesn't do you any good if you don't get on the air. So that's number one. I'd say the number two thing to do is join a club. Find a club in your area, preferably one with similar interests that you have. If it's a CW you're interested in, find a CW club. You might just want to find a club that just does a broad range of things. But join a club. Why join a club? Because that will enable you to find an Elmer. Elmer is a ham term for a mentor. So if you get involved with a club, you're going to find out that there'll be a lot of resources available for you. Maybe more than one club. You don't have to be just in one, but find something that interests you and join it, because that's going to be the best way to get help, to get motivated, to learn things. Some other resources available are nets. There's different types of nets. We call social or rag chew net is basically just that. People that just get on the air and talk about whatever. It may be devoted to a particular topic. It may just be general. There are what are called traffic nets, and those are fairly formal, and those are for passing formal message traffic. And that isn't necessarily emergency type traffic, but before the days of free long distance phones and cell phones, people used to use this a lot more to send what we call radiograms, like a telegram to people, and people still do that, to send a congratulatory, happy birthday, whatever, something like that. And then there are training nets that are used, as the name implies, for training, particularly in emergency communications. Becoming the net control station, the NCS, the net control station, is a great way to improve your skills. It gets you on the air and it'll help you overcome the typical, what we call mic fright, the nervousness of getting on the air. Well, you listen to a net for a while and you learn how a net control operator operates that net, and you can volunteer to be a net control operator and get that practice. And the thing is, you make a mistake, everybody understands, and it's not a big deal. You just learn from it. You want to find nets, you can find a list online in the ARRL website of all kinds of nets by area or by type. So that's a good resource for you. Another good resource, things are ham fests and conferences, like the Dayton Hamvention every year, or local ham fests and swap meets, and where sometimes it's just people selling equipment, but oftentimes there's presentations, lectures, things like that. There's even some online, which kind of started with COVID, ham fests like QSO Today, where there's presentations on different topics, and you can access them online. So if you're interested in a particular thing and there's a presentation on it, that would be a great way to learn something about it. There's online forums and websites, and there's lots of YouTube videos. Lots of YouTube videos on ham radio, all kinds of topics, whether it's troubleshooting electronics, or reviews of equipment, or how to operate a digital software system, or whatever. There's just lots of them. Here's a couple of them I've put here on the slide. Dave Kassler has got literally hundreds of YouTubes. He's very popular. They're on many subjects. If you just go to YouTube, you can find it there. Wave Talkers is one that does a Sunday broadcast, a live stream, and then you can get the recording of that on YouTube. Ham Radio 2.0 is another one. There's an organization called Rat Pack. great acronym. It's Radio Amateur Training Programs and Activities Committee, or something like that. They can't, you had to force the name to fit the acronym, I think. But they have 2 Zoom presentations a week, one on Wednesdays and one on Thursdays. The one on Wednesdays on general topics. The one on Thursdays is usually on emergency communications. They'll have different presentations every week, and they have on their website, they have recordings of all the past ones. So you can just scroll down and find a topic that's of interest. Go ahead and watch that. There's some excellent presentations on there. If you're interested in learning Morse code, I've tried. I'm terrible. I've given up on that personally. It's not a skill I'm able to develop. But for those that are interested, there's the CW Academy, which has online training classes. There's a training software you can download. There's a couple of ones here, Just Learn Morse Code and GFAR-FON, which is a British guy, his Morse trainer. There are other ones, but you can download these on your computer to help you learn Morse code. And then again, get on a net. There are CW nets, and the ARRL has again a list of them available on their website. ARRL also has scheduled CW transmissions that you can practice copying the code, writing it down. They have a schedule and at different speeds, so you can get slower speed transmissions, faster ones, so that you can improve your skill and then move up to a faster one and so forth. And they also have practice audio files, which you can also get from their website. So that's another valuable resource if you want to try and learn Morse code. Again, get in a club, get a mentor, an Elmer, somebody that'll, there's plenty of people out there who'd be more than happy to help you. Contests. Contests are, and I know those of you that were just in the last classes are a little repetitive, but a contest is an activity where you try to make as many contacts as possible in a particular period of time, and in a particular mode, and you may have particular kinds of stations that you're supposed to contact, and you exchange specific information in order to complete a contact and log it in to have it count as part of the contest. And there's different awards people can get for the competition. It's primarily HF. There are other VHF, UHF contests as well, but it's mostly an HF thing. It's a great way to improve your mic techniques and procedures and to learn to listen and pick out conversations from all the noise and other activity that's going on there. It's a great way to just get more proficient at operating particularly on HF radio. There's a couple of contest calendars we've got there that'll tell you information about the contest. There's this time of year, there's one every weekend. There's, maybe several, oftentimes individual states. There'll be a state contest where the goal is to contact many different counties in a state or different criteria. But again, it's a good way, even if you're not really good at it, and even if you don't have a really good station, it's just a way to improve your skill. And it's kind of fun. Parks on the Air. Parks on the Air is a program where you they call activate a park. It might be a national park, a state park, a county park. And there's a website you go to get the information, get involved in it. And again, you sort of get points for however many different parks you can transmit from and make contacts from. A good way to practice setting up portable equipment in the field, improve your mic techniques and procedures, and of course, you'll always end up having to troubleshoot your equipment. Similar to Parks on the Air is Summits on the Air, where if you're into mountaineering, you go to a mountain peak and transmit from there. So you got to schlep all that gear up the mountain, set it up, transmit, make contacts. Similarly, there's an Islands on the Air for different islands around the world, not just in the U.S. So these are just, again, resources to get on the air, improve your skills just by doing it, by practicing, by getting involved. Those are the websites. And like I said, they're uploaded in the PDF into chat. There's also one for lighthouses. All right. Public service events. It's a great way to give back to your community and to have fun and to improve your skills. Supporting parades, bike races, things like that. Oftentimes you're going to be using a handheld radio, an HT, or possibly a mobile, depending on what you're doing. You might be sitting with your mobile rig at a rest stop, for example, or a first aid station, or you might be along the route of a parade with your HT, reporting any problems, or they may want to know, hey, when does float number so and so pass this corner, so they can keep track of the progress of the parade and things like that. So you get an opportunity to get on the air, practice your procedures, and usually kind of have fun at the same time. You get the front row seat for the parade, or you get to watch the event that's going on, the bike race, whatever it might be. Again, you'll get practice with troubleshooting, particularly if you're setting your mobile rig up or whatever. And you may be using APRS. One of the events that I support, we have it covers a couple of different counties. It's a big bike event, charity event, and we have people at rest stops with mobile rigs. We have people shadowing the race officials they have their HTs and they're following the race officials around. And we have vehicles, they're called SAG vehicles, supplies and gear vehicles, with APRS transmitters. So we know where they are, and we have a map of where each of these vehicles is that can provide support. And when our net control gets a call that, hey, there's one of the bikers has fallen and is injured in such and such a location, we know who's closest there. We can route them there. Can be fairly sophisticated stuff and great practice, as well as a service to the community. Field Day. Field Day is an annual event sponsored by ARRL. It's the fourth weekend in June. And the idea is to set up temporary stations outdoors in public places. It sort of has a contest application to it as well. It's getting points for making contacts. It's also sort of public service and emergency preparedness thrown in there, community outreach, because you go to a park somewhere, and clubs will do this, and emergency communications groups will do this as a group, where they set up a table with information about ham radio, so the people coming by will see what you're doing, maybe take an interest in that. It's a way for community outreach, and it's a great way to improve technical skills. And you can learn how to do this if you're doing it with a club, and if your club has a big field day operation, one of the ones I'm involved in, we have this huge tent, and we've set up about 4 or 5 stations, and we've got a trailer with tower and antennas on it, and we set all this stuff up at a park, and it's a really good event to get involved in. Yeah, there's also a thing called Winter Field Day. It's not ARL sponsored. It's the last weekend in January. And depending on what part of the country you live in, it can be quite a challenge going out in January, setting up your station outdoors somewhere. But that's another option. So these are all different activities, depending on what your interest is, that can help you improve the skills you need to pursue that interest. EMCOM, Emergency Communications. Again, getting involved with an EMCOM group is a way to improve all these skills. A lot of the same ones we're seeing over and over here, I know. But again, you're putting them to use in different ways, perhaps. And again, supporting your community. And I imagine most of you have an interest in EMCOM. So again, clubs and EMCOM groups, they are a source of Elmers. Oftentimes they run nets. And that would be a really good way to, again, practice, test your equipment on a regular basis, and just get out there and and get on the air. The nets might be voice, they might be digital, they might be both, might be a combination. As I said, many of these groups will participate in field day. They may provide training or education at their meetings. Maybe every meeting they have a presentation on a technical topic, for example. If they're an MCOM group, they probably participate in exercises of some sort. And either one might support public service events so that you don't have to find the event. You just participate with the club or the organization that you've joined. Clubs focus on many different aspects. They might be focused on VHF, UHF, or HF, or just DX competition or contesting. There may be a digital one. The club might really focus on building stuff. A lot of them focus on providing training and for licensing classes like this. I got involved with doing this through Lake Washington Ham Club, and a number of them people who've been presenting here I know from Lake Washington Ham Club, and we do online exams 6 times a month. Some may be focused on youth and working with a local high school or working with a scout group, something like that. So find one or more that fits your goals. As I mentioned before, you can find it on the website. They'll list both. Well, I'll show you what they list. Here's an example of a page I pulled up. Here's Mount Baker Amateur Radio Club. It says it's an ARR affiliated club. It gives you the location, their costs. They have a club call sign or more than one. Talks about what their specialties are. In this case, digital modes, generally public service and emergency, repeaters, VHF and UHF. So a variety of things. And services they have, they do entry-level license classes. They do testing, they do mentoring. So that gives you an idea. It'll have their website if they have a website. You can click on the Go Now button up there and it'll bring in even more detail. It'll tell you when they have meetings, where they meet, things like that. How many members they have. They'll give you points of contact, phone numbers, email addresses, whatever to contact them. So you can get a lot of information about clubs, search for your local area, find one that that matches your interests. MCOM groups, mentioned Aries organization. Contact your local emergency coordinator for your area, which again, you can find on the ARRL website. Go into the sections area for whatever section you're in and find the local emergency coordinator, or if you can't find one, find the section emergency coordinator and contact them to find out who near you is the person to reach out to become affiliated with the organization. I mentioned RACES, Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. Those are run by the local emergency manager or civil defense official. So again, this is government related. Aries doesn't just support government, they support hospitals, Red Cross, Salvation Army, different people. So you can be involved with any of those groups. American Red Cross, depending on the part of the country you're in, will have a more or less of an active amateur radio team in their area. Salvation Army has a ham radio service. Saturn, in different parts of the country, some are more active than others. And REACT, as I mentioned, I believe earlier, was not necessarily just ham radio, but CBeers and family GMRS, family radio service people, and also sometimes hams are involved. The activity of these organizations varies around the country depending on where you are. Community emergency response teams. These are teams under local emergency managers, civil defense officials that are community members that get training to help fill the gap when first responders can't get there. So they get training in basic first aid and light urban search and rescue and things like that, so that they can be, for their own little neighborhood or their own community, can be an augmentation to the first responders. Oftentimes they will want ham radio operators to help them, or they themselves become ham radio operators. Civil Air Patrol, that's the Air Force Auxiliary. If you're a private pilot and want to get involved in that, you can also get a lot of communications practice there. You're not going to be on ham frequencies, but you'll get the same kind of training and experience that would apply to ham radio as well. Oops. Same with the Coast Guard Auxiliary and Mars. It's a way to develop your skills. You may not be on ham frequencies, but you'll be doing procedurally the same kinds of things and the same kinds of equipment. And again, supporting your community. If you're for emergency communications training, there are a number of resources. Most emergency managers are going to, if you're going to be a RACES operator, you're going to be involved with a auxiliary communication service or some other organization supporting a government agency, you're going to need to know about the National Incident Management System and the Incident Command System, NIMS and ICS. And FEMA has a large number of online and classroom training available for that. The ARRL has a Introduction to Emergency Communications course online, the EC001. You can go to their website for information on that. Another excellent course up here in the Pacific Northwest is Oregon ACES, Auxiliary Communication and Emergency Solutions. It's a 2-day basic course for a new ham operator that wants to get involved in emergency communications. FEMA has what's called AUXCOM, Auxiliary Communicator. And in the ICS system, that's what hams are called, auxiliary communicators. And that is also an excellent course that would improve your skills if you want to be a emergency communications ham radio operator. In our area here, and you may find clubs in other parts of the country that have similar things. We have a club here in Seattle that puts out an annual special events and information guide that has all the contact information for all the clubs in that part of the state, Puget Sound area, all the emergency communications groups, the nets, the times, the frequencies they're on, public service events that use ham radio operators, all the repeaters in the area, conferences, and it's a free guide that they publish every year, they update every year and have on their website. And depending on where you are, there may be clubs that have something similar, although this is pretty darn good. I'd be surprised if there's one as good around, but there may be. Again, clubs, MCOM groups are a great way to get involved, get active, learn, and improve your skills. Sort of the bottom line is just do it. Get on the air. You're going to learn by doing. Any questions? Anything I can help you with? Is anyone alive? Well then, if not, that's it.
Good, John. Thank you very much.
Let me close out of this and stop sharing.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, John.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Any questions or anything? You can point anyone in any other directions on things. I'm just curious where everyone's from. I know last time we had a lot of people that were local. Is everyone from the Puget Sound area?
I'm from the Dalles, Oregon.
Okay. Okay.
I'm from Goldendale, just not too far from the Dalles.
Okay. Well, if you're interested in MCOM and you haven't taken the Oregon ACES class, highly recommend that. It's where it originated. It's mostly here in the Pacific Northwest, although it's starting to spread. Very good basic MCOM training class. All right. Well,
Sounds like we're kind of winding down here, so I'm going to stop the recording, but let's just go ahead and maybe that'll encourage some free chat.
okay.